Yeah. Fly was flying on the team. Touchdown. Time to get Jalen this ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a bird gang nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here cool on Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Sean, Hunter like Randall. Season here, really time to do them in. Your boy Philly Fresco. Thanks for tuning in.
What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and this is Philly the podcast. I am joined, as always, by my co-host Brandon, and today we have a very, very special guest, man. The man himself, Brandon Lee Gowton. Brandon, how is it going, man? How you doing?
Always glad to be with you guys, especially with another Brandon. That's always big for me. So thanks for having me.
Definitely. We're glad to have you back, man. This is the second time. First time, you're just a guest. Second time, you're family. So welcome to the family, Brandon. But we'll hop right into it. I know you've had a very busy week, so we won't hold you too long. But I want to ask, man, obviously you've covered the Eagles for a while now. You've been with this team for a while now. You've seen some different coaching staffs, a bunch of different rosters. Does anything hop out to you about this team or about this staff that's just kind of unique to this training camp so far?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest differences that everyone's been talking about really recently is how the practices are a little bit shorter. And that's, seemingly designed to keep the roster healthier. Now, I think, it's not like everyone is healthy and there's always going to be injuries. So that's not like a flawless strategy or anything, but it does stick out. And another thing that I've noticed specifically from Nick Sirianni, and I think is a big focus of his ethos and the staff in general, is like player development and trying to get the most out of these players. I've seen Nick Sirianni, obviously the big story this week was him like really getting on Jalen Reagor, really kind of chewing him out after a bad rep. He hasn't only done that with Reagor. I've seen him done it with Fulgham too. But the next day, Jalen Reagor had a better practice, and Nick Sirianni, put his arm around him and was excited for him. So I think you see a lot of energy. I think you see a lot of hands-on interaction, especially with these younger players. And I think that's kind of the goal here. Is like let's get some of these younger players and see if we can make them better.
Definitely. And like you said, a lot of energy. And we watch the training camps. I'm always seeing you dapping people up. Everybody's high-fiving you and stuff. A lot of energy going towards you. So I want to ask you, is the energy different as far as like these players? Do you feel like they're happier at camp? It's better to go to work for them this year a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a positive vibe around this team right now. And just in terms of, you look at Darius Slay, he's always joking around. He's interrupting his teammates' press conferences. You see the Boston Scott doing his little bodyguard bit where he's, standing up next to these players. I think he was doing it for Milton Williams, who's obviously one of the bigger players on the team. And he was doing it for Greg Ward recently. So the guys are having fun here, and I think it's important to kind of do that because training camp gets monotonous. They're in yesterday was just day 9, and you're out there grinding for most days. They've had a couple off days, but those are only after every 4 days or so. So there's a lot of grinding out there. I think guys are trying to keep it light and keep the mood up. And it seems like so far, it's not like Giants camp, and you have people fighting each other out here. So I guess that's good.
No laps.
No laps. No.
Now, yesterday, as we all saw, like on Twitter and everything, the offense did not have the best of practices. What did you see out there? And was it really bad offense, or was the defense playing up to par? Were they playing well?
I think, like with anything like that, more than one thing can be true. So I think you have to give credit to the defense. But at the same time, there's things about the offense that clearly weren't just like the defense succeeding. And what I mean by that is like there were drops, there were penalties, the execution just wasn't great. So like some of that stuff, I think, is just the offense merely, being out of sync. I think that's how I described it. Look, anytime you have like 5 straight incompletions, like that's not great. Especially in a practice setting, where the offense in theory, is favorable. It's not like you can actually hit the quarterback. It's not like, the defenders are actually like tackling and being as physical as they could be in a real game. So, I definitely think the offense struggled. It's not the end of the world. I think it's a little concerning from the standpoint of like we haven't really seen the offense have a practice where they looked like, oh, wow, this is running really smoothly. And, some of it's to be expected. Like Jalen Hurts had his struggles last year. He's coming into a new system. Devontae Smith isn't out there. Two of the starting members of the offensive line aren't out there. Brandon Brooks and Isaac Seumalo are currently out. So, and it's a new scheme. Nick Sirianni is implementing a new system. So there's reasons, for it to not look like, the Chiefs offense or something. But I think it could be reasonably expected to look a little bit better than it did on Saturday.
Hopefully.
Right. And you also, I've noticed on bringing it back to Twitter, I saw that you tweeted that Jalen Hurts really hasn't done anything spectacular to dissuade the Eagles from looking at other quarterbacks. Could you elaborate on that a little more? And just what have you seen from Jalen throughout training camp so far?
Yeah, I don't think it's accurate to say Jalen Hurts has had an awful training camp and he's looked terrible every day. That's not what I'm saying, to be clear. I think some people took it that way. That's not the message. The message is that there's a very high bar, I think we all know this, for Jalen Hurts to prove himself to the Eagles, not even just the fans or us, to the Eagles, about is he their franchise quarterback? I think there's a very high bar for him to clear. And based on what I've seen out of him in training camp thus far, which, take it for what it's worth. It's 9 training camp practices. There's still a whole season, still a whole preseason to be played. So, things can change. But to this point, where we are right now, at this moment in time, I don't think he's done anything to really move the needle. I don't see any kind of night and day difference from Jalen Hurts from last year to this year. I don't see a quarterback who's throwing with anticipation enough. I think he's kind of relying on waiting until someone's open and seeing it and then throwing it. And I think that's kind of leading to a lot of sacks in practice. He's not getting rid of the ball quick enough. Accuracy has kind of been scattershot and still an issue. So I'm just not seeing this big leap that you sometimes see from players from year 1 to year 2 from him. Again, we'll see if that changes. I think in the real games, obviously, you're going to see his mobility be a bigger weapon than you could ever see it being in practice. So I'm not out on Jalen Hurts by any means, but the way things are trending, I just don't feel great about it.
Definitely. And you brought up the real games, and that's something that a lot of me and my subscribers have been talking about is this preseason game coming up. It's kind of become tradition that a lot of teams, we saw Cowboys doing it, Steelers, just sitting your starters. You let them out for a little while and you sit them. The question I have is, do the Eagles really have that luxury? When we go up Thursday, I believe is the game, are we going to see some of these guys that we think are key players, starters, going to get extended reps in this preseason to kind of get acclimated to the system?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think with how, scaled back the practices have been, I don't think they're going to be aggressive with it in terms of we're going to see a lot of the starters, but I feel like we should see a little bit more than none, given your point there about how it is a new system and everything. And it's just, even beyond that, it's just a second-year quarterback. It's not like Jalen Hurts, is Aaron Rodgers, and he's been around forever, and he doesn't need preseason reps. No, give him some preseason reps, see what he can do. Get him, especially if he's struggling in practice, give him an extra chance to kind of work through things. So, again, I'm not trying to play him the whole game or anything, but, give him a little bit of action and then see what you get out of him.
Definitely.
And one of my battles I was really looking forward to this offseason is between Derrick Barnett and Josh Sweat. What have you seen from them out there, and who do you think may edge out in that battle there?
I would give Josh Sweat the lead right now, but I will say, Derrick Barnett, I think has had a really good training camp too, and I think that's kind of been overshadowed by how good Josh Sweat has been. And Josh Sweat has pretty much showed up every single day. He's made some impact kind of plays as far as a defensive end can in practice, but he can't actually sack the quarterback. But it's clear he's getting there. He's beating Jordan Mailata, who is having a really good training camp as well. Not regularly, but he's winning reps against him, and I think that's a good sign. It's not like he's only beating up on Andre Dillard, who is not having a good training camp. So we're seeing good things out of Josh Sweat, seeing good things out of Derrick Barnett too. Early in training camp, Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles defensive coordinator, said that he views both Sweat and Barnett as starters, and that kind of is an interesting way to put it, but I think it's kind of true. I think we're going to see a heavy rotation of those guys. I don't think it's one of those guys going to be playing way more than the other, but just if we're talking about week 1 starters, because there's only going to be 2 edge rushers presumably out there on the first play of the first game there, and I think it is going to be Sweat at this point, at least just based on the training camp he's having.
Now piggybacking off that question, off Jordan's question, my co-host, piggybacking off that for a second, we also did see Lane Johnson and Derrick Barnett get restructured. I know a lot of my subscribers are telling me, hey, we're going to go get another guy. Do you think that there's any meaning behind him getting restructured? Do you think it's just easier to keep him on this roster now that it's a little bit less money, or maybe we have something up our sleeves a little bit?
So a lot of those restructures, I think most of the time, like aren't necessarily made with like a direct move in mind. Like, okay, we're going to restructure this and now we're going to do this. It's not like necessarily from A to B like that. I think it's kind of for the flexibility. It's like, let's restructure them. So if something comes up, then we can make that move and we don't have to do it then. Like, let's just get it out of the way now. Now with that said, the Deshaun Watson rumors are obviously out there. And I think it was very interesting, the timing of that buzz we heard earlier this week, and the Eagles restructuring enough cap space to clear to fit Deshaun Watson's $10.5 base million salary this year all of a sudden, and the fact that there was a meeting after practice, presumably between Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and Andy Weidel and Nick Sirianni, kind of the big, the power players in this organization. Maybe that doesn't mean, they're trading for Deshaun Watson, but I mean, you have to like keep an eye on that when you see like the dots kind of being connected like that. So yeah, I don't know that like they restructure that and that means 100% they're making a deal, but I mean, it's something to watch.
It's very, very interesting.
I always feel like the Eagles, like when it comes to like, all right, maybe we'll be smooth in this training camp, and all these rumors just pop up at all different times and it just started. But the Eagles did make some key signings this offseason, especially on the defensive side of the ball. What has really stood out to you with this like new look defense that's going on?
Well, other than being good and getting the best out of the offense, I would say, just a lot of active members in the secondary. Anthony Harris has been kind of quiet in training camp until yesterday. He did a couple nice plays, including a pass breakup and a throw to Dallas Goedert. Steve Nelson, I think, has been pretty active again. He's gotten beat deep a couple times, including by Devontae Smith, but he's had his fair share of wins as well and a good fair share of pass deflection. So good things out of him. I mean, the defensive line is still pretty strong. We're seeing Josh Sweat get a lot of pressure. I mentioned Derrick Barnett too. Fletcher Cox is still really good. No surprise. Javon Hargrave might be having like an underrated camp in terms of hype because we're all talking about Josh Sweat and our attention might be elsewhere. We're not really necessarily paying attention to the fact that Javon Hargrave has been getting a lot of interior pressure too. So that defensive line's pretty good. I think the secondary is not elite, but it's upgraded, improved from what they had last year. And then the linebacker position is kind of unsettled, but I think, if you kind of get by there with Alex Singleton, who obviously did some things late last season, and they brought in Eric Wilson, who had a nice interception yesterday, maybe you kind of have enough there between, the defensive line and the secondary and just kind of okay linebackers that I think this could be like a pretty respectable defense. I think we're talking about like top 15. I think maybe like back end of the top 10 potential, kind of that kind of potential, assuming, they stay healthy and this thing does gel and everything. And it's not just a product of the offense looking bad in training camp. But yeah, I think there's more reason to be excited about the defense than there is the offense.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely hyped about the offense. Now about the defense, excuse me. Now I actually want to bring up a couple of the rookies on the defense. Obviously Davion Taylor's been standing out, obviously got injured. Jacoby Stevens, we had on the show. He was doing his thing. I just kind of want to ask about them because I'm big fans of those guys. Eagles fans, we always pick underdogs, right? We got to latch on to somebody. So those are my two. And I just want to know, what have you seen from them? I've seen them tweeted out a lot. Jacoby kind of running with the middle linebackers of the third team. Davion obviously making plays with the first team. Do you think these guys or any of these rookies can be somebody that, gives us an instant impact?
Yeah, so with Davion, it was really interesting because he was getting all the first team reps at linebacker when the Eagles were really rotating like everyone else next to him. It was like TJ Edwards and then Eric Wilson, and then just everyone. They're like rotating a bunch of guys through that spot there next to him while Davion Taylor was like remaining the guy in there. And I think there's some sense to that, and the fact that Davion Taylor obviously is inexperienced, especially so, for a football player at his level, since he didn't play much in high school. So I think, it makes sense to get him those reps. Now, he had a calf injury. That's unfortunately is keeping him out week to week, which I think is kind of a big deal because not only is he not practicing and not available now, but I think because of the reps he's missing now, that could impact, the playing time he does or doesn't get in the regular season. So I think that's kind of unfortunate. I kind of had seen a couple of nice plays from him. And then with Jacoby Stevens, it's kind of funny because he had his best practice of training camp earlier this week. And then he has a nice press conference after practice too. And then all of a sudden he has a hamstring injury. And then he's now he's missing time too. So it's kind of a bummer, that these guys all of a sudden, are getting hurt right after they're kind of showing some stuff. But yeah, it looks like they're going to be out for a little bit here.
It's better now than later, right? Get it out of the way now. But to jump to the offense now, I know we talk about the wide receivers and Jalen Hurts, but the running back room is pretty crowded in itself, which is a good problem to have. I mean, I feel like you could really place any of the running backs in any order, and you're going to be. I think they're going to be pretty good this season. Do you have any idea of a surprise cut that may happen in that running back room? Because unfortunately, we can't keep them all.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not easy. Like you said, like I'm looking at this group, I'm trying to like go through like an Eagles 53-man roster projection that I'm doing for BGN, and I'm like, who do I leave out here? Because I think Jordan Howard, who I didn't really expect to see much of anything from, thought he kind of was done. He said he thought he was done earlier this offseason. Like he thought, no one was going to sign him because he didn't have a good year in Miami last year before he came back to Philly. So I think he could be still the odd man out though, just because he's a little bit older and he has so many touches like on his body compared to all the other players. Like he's had a big workload, even though he hasn't been in the NFL like super long, and he's still like 26 or 25 or whatever. So I think he could kind of be the odd man out. I think we've seen some nice things from Kerryon Johnson. Not so much as a runner. Like he's been okay, I think, in that regard. He's had some nice runs, but in terms of like pass protection, he's probably their best pass protecting back, which is important. Also has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. So I think he might find a way to stick. And again, less touches or fewer touches than Howard and everything. Kenny Gainwell, I haven't seen like kind of enough out of. I don't think they want to, give up on him. And I don't think they would cut him as a rookie. I think he's done some nice things as a pass catcher, but haven't seen much as a runner, which, somewhat to be expected. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Eagles do there. The only thing I know for certain is Miles Sanders, obviously your number one. And then Boston Scott is like locked in. I'm pretty sure is number two. Beyond that, I'm thinking it's going to be Kerryon. And then Jason Huntley, who I didn't even mention, I think you have to keep him because he has had some really nice, long, explosive runs in training camp. When this guy gets like daylight, he's gone. He just takes off. No one can catch him. He's also probably their best option at kick returner, which doesn't like matter a ton, because kick returns don't matter as much in the NFL anymore. But still, they're clearly their best option there. So I think they've got to keep Huntley too. So going to be a tough cut. Maybe there's a trade. Maybe you try to trade something small for one of those guys since you're getting some good production out of them. But yeah, it's a good group.
Yeah, I would love to see us keep Huntley. Huntley, another shameless plug. We had Huntley on the show as well. Awesome guy. Awesome. I love that guy. So I would love to see him get on the squad. Now, I want to keep on running backs for a second. Like I said earlier, Eagles fans love to pick their underdogs. So Adrian Killins and Kenneth Gainwell are fan favorites. Like it's pretty obvious fans love these guys. And I've seen them working a lot, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen them working a lot with the wide receiver group, doing a lot of wide receiver drills. We see that in Jacksonville with Travis Etienne, I think his name is. Is that something that we should be looking for? Do you think one of these guys, being Kenneth Gainwell or Adrian Killins, can possibly take more of a slot role? And on top of that, do you think they're fighting for the same role in this offense?
Yeah, so we see like Killins more with the wide receivers, like actually, like with that position group, working with them explicitly. Even though I think he's still officially listed at running back, and probably would still get carries, if he was working into the offense at some point. Yeah, I think Killins, is a long shot to make the roster just because of the numbers crunch. I think he's could be a safe bet for the practice squad to have him around still, and I think you can kind of get him there. I don't think teams are going to be like super clamoring after him. I don't think he's done enough to kind of warrant that. And then with Gainwell, I've seen some nice things here and there as a receiver. I just don't think he's popped enough in camp, and maybe we'll see if this changes, in the preseason games, and it easily could, to kind of warrant a role for him, or at least a big one in the offense year one. I just think between Sanders and Scott, and then again, even potentially Huntley and or Kerryon Johnson being ahead of him, I just think like they could keep 5 running backs. And he might be the 5th one. So I don't know how much of a role there is for him unless there's injury, unless they really have like a couple plays specifically in mind for him, a specific package. But beyond that, I just think it's kind of going to be like a learning year in year one for him.
I mean, having a running back out there in the wide receiver spot wouldn't be too bad with those like wide receiver screens or anything like that. I mean, with the vision, but outside of like Devontae Smith, what rookie has really stood out to you this training camp so far?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously wish he was practicing more and not injured. But I think he'll be okay. I think so we've seen him on the jugs machine before and after practice. We've seen him kind of like jogging around. Like he doesn't seem to be like limping or anything. So I think he is going to be fine. maybe back in a week or two. We'll see. I'm trying to go through the rest of the rookies here. Landon Dickerson obviously hasn't been out there. He's still on the NFI list. Milton Williams it's interesting because they kind of been moving him between defensive end and defensive tackle. I haven't seen much out of him. Other than he is like at those different spots. So that's kind of interesting. Gainwell, I thought might, have a bigger impact as a rookie. I think a lot of us thought that, but I'm not seeing that out of him right away. So like you're talking about the earlier guys, I'm like trying to see who I missed here. Like, who am I missing? Like, who am I?
We got like 45 rookies this year.
Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to think of even undrafted guys.
Mcpherson.
Yeah, you'd see, thank you. You saved me there because I'm like, who am I missing? I know there's someone standing out, and I can't think of it because there's like I think they drafted 9 guys. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's 100%. Zach. That's like the definitive answers. Zach McPherson has really stood out in training camp. He's making a lot of plays on the ball. And it's not just coverage too. I've seen him in position. Again, they're not tackling to the ground, but I've seen him in position on running plays where he's been in a good spot to make the tackle. So that's good to see as well. I don't think he's going to have, again, a starting role because you have Steve Nelson, you have Darius Slay, and I think it's going to be Maddox in the slot. And I even think it's going to be Josiah Scott as Maddox's backup. So that kind of leaves McPherson as the top backup on the outside. But look, if you look at how the Eagles secondary has gone in recent years, there's a lot of injuries, and there's probably going to be an opportunity for Zach McPherson to play at some point. And I think he's looked good. I think, like, from what we've seen in camp, I feel like he projects not as a starter this year, but as like a future starter down the road.
Definitely. And that's good to hear. I mean, shoot, Eagles fans have not had decent secondary in a long time, so we'll take it. I got 2 more questions for you, Brandon. We'll get you out of here. But I want to know, man, I know this is probably a hard question to ask just because we're so early in camp. But I know Eagles fans want a running first team. As we've just been saying, we have a whole bunch of running backs. Do you think that this team has any sort of identity yet? Do you think they're going to lean towards the run game, maybe be a pack? Like, do you see any type of identity forming with this team this early yet?
So when you ask this question, I can't help but think about that story on The Athletic about how Doug Peterson was basically like criticized, apparently, by Jeffrey Lurie for not passing the ball enough, even though the Eagles beat the Packers with the run, and then they beat the Bills with the run. So it's hard for me to believe that all of a sudden the Eagles are, changing like an organizational philosophy basically and becoming this run-heavy team. Now, with that said, I think you look at Nick Sirianni here and what he preaches in terms of, we're not going to have, this scheme that is like unflexible. We're going to do what's best for our players. And I think, you look at the strengths of this offense, and there's going to probably have to be more running than there typically is for the Eagles. Now, again, I don't think that means they're leading the NFL in rushing attempts per game all of a sudden, but it could be, more than we saw with Doug's offense in recent years. So I think we're going to see a little bit more running. I think Jalen Hurts is going to obviously kind of boost those numbers himself and take off running a lot, not even necessarily on just design runs. So, we'll see that go up in that way. But, at the end of the day, this organization, Jeffrey Lurie has literally said, like, he's obsessed with having an elite passing offense. Like, that is the ultimate goal. So for now, I think it's, up to Sirianni to kind of make the most of what he has, and we'll see a lot of running. But long term, I don't think we're seeing a shift like that.
I tried, guys. I tried, Philly fans. Hopefully, we can still wish. Last question I want to ask you, Brandon, man. Obviously, you've been at these practices. You know what I'm saying? Tonight is going to be the first time for a lot of Eagles fans that they get to actually see an open practice. Just as a fan, take the reporter hat off for a second. What are you looking for, and what do you think Eagles fans should expect at this practice?
Well, I think coming off this down day as an offense, I think it's only, like I said this on BGN Radio, like I am so sure, especially after the tweet too that you brought up earlier for me about Jalen Hurts, I'm like so confident he's gonna have a great practice tonight because like everyone's like, oh, what are these reporters talking about? Jalen Hurts looks great. So but I think there's a lot of pressure on him. He's coming into the link for the first time with fans there, like at least a very big crowd. It's the first time, I believe, he's in the spotlight too, even with any kind of fans there at the link. So I think, all eyes are on him. There's a lot of pressure coming off of this bad practice. A lot of people, I think, a lot of fans in the stands, if they see the kind of offense tonight that we saw at practice on Saturday, I think there's going to be some booing. I mean, people might be excited about the defense, but like if the offense looks so out of sorts, I think, you know, people aren't going to be shy to boo, especially after going through all of last season and not being able to boo them in person at the Link last year. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Hurts, and we'll see if he steps up.
Yeah, at least our audio guy had us, right? Our audio guy threw those boos in for us. That was that was elite.
Yeah.
But hey, Brandon, man, it is always a pleasure having you on. I appreciate your time so much, man. We're gonna have all his links in the description. So definitely, if you don't know who Brandon, I don't know where you've been, but definitely go support him, man, and BGN Radio, man. He's doing a great job. But yeah, man, is there anything you want to say before we get you out of here, brother?
Joe, Brandon, thanks for having me. Pleasure. Happy to come on anytime. And yeah, check out Bleeding Green Nation, all the links that you'll see down below.
Definitely, man. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that tuned in. We've had like 100 people in here. Be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe. And other than that, y'all know what it is, man. It is Fly Eagles Fly. And we are out of here. Peace.